All right, we're going to go ahead and get started for our webinar for today. Today we are going to look at tips and tricks with Power BI. We will talk a little bit about project online data and tables, but a lot of what we're going to go through today is applicable whether or not Project Online is your data source. My name is Amanda Kuhlman. I've been working with Microsoft Project Online, Excel reporting for more than 8 years. I work with almost all of these products on a daily basis, particularly with Project Online and Microsoft Project. We use that to manage our projects internally. I also do a lot with Power BI and Excel, SharePoint, a lot of the other Microsoft technologies. I'm also certified in the same in Microsoft PPM, Project, and in SharePoint. Our agenda for today is going to cover these items. First, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Integent and what we do, what services we provide. Then I'm going to look at Power BI overview and data review, which is going to focus on Project Online tables and fields and how to navigate the backend. We're going to look a little bit at Power Query Editor, just an overview of that and why you might want to consider using it, even though it is a little bit more of an advanced Power BI user experience. Looking at custom columns, visual attributes, and then looking at the workspace, some licensing requirements and what you might want there, and then a little conclusion. We do have the Q&A open for our event today, so if you have any questions as we go through, we'll be moderating those and likely be able to address those at the end. I'll say likely, time permitting, of course, but be able to look at those and answer any questions that you have. Integent is primarily a project management consulting for Microsoft technologies. We provide Microsoft project scheduling best practices. Since we've been doing this for many years, a lot of the people that we have working with us on staff have been working with Microsoft Project for 10, 20, 30 years. So we have a lot of experience with best practices in working with both Microsoft Project standalone schedules and also on the enterprise. So using Microsoft Project Server, Project Online, which focuses more on that portfolio project management, portfolio resource management across the enterprise. We provide training for the same as well. Project Online, business intelligence or reporting, as well as build reports for a lot of our clients. They come to us with a very specific need, part of what we'll talk about today. Why do you want to build a report? Who is going to be the main audience? And we build the reports for them, for you. We also do Microsoft Project support and just general questions and answers Q&A for your projects. So we have a lot of clients that come to us just my schedule's not working correctly. I type in this into the duration column and these 3 things happen and I don't know why. So we're looking a lot at your schedules, very particular to how you manage your projects, both inside and outside the tool, and how to best support that inside Microsoft Project. And consulting for SharePoint support, doing a company intranet, doing a project site. Jumping right in to our topic for today, which is Power BI. Power BI Desktop and Workspace are 2 different interfaces for Power BI. If you are going to be editing reports, you're a heavy user, a heavy editor, Power BI Desktop is going to be how I would highly recommend that you use to manage your reports. It is a free download. You do still have to authenticate for Project Online that you have the rights inside the environment to read the data, which is admins, most project managers, and that is configurable in your Project Online environment. But Power BI Desktop will really give you an easier interface to create and modify. If you are going to be making any changes to your data model, you're going to add some custom columns in so that you can do conditional formatting. Those kinds of changes do need to be done in the desktop as well. So again, if you're going to create reports, then desktop is what you need. The Power BI Workspace is where most users will digest the information, where your executives will go to look at an entire portfolio of projects so that they can slice them by program, by project manager, where they are going to use the reports. You can edit there. I have edited there, making some light changes, but Power BI Desktop is where you're really going to want to focus on the heavy lifting. I like the interface a little bit better as well. Makes the panels easier. I can see all of my buttons before I click on them. It doesn't make it so cramped of an experience. Particularly with Project Online, you do need to use OData as the source. That is what all of the feeds from Project Online sit in. There are 41 tables of OData for Project Online, and you will need to, again, authenticate so that Power BI knows this person has permissions to look at the data. When you do first connect to the data with Power BI, you do choose Get Data, you choose Get Data, and then from OData feed, it will prompt you to log in here. And you are always going to choose Organizational Account, and it's going to ask you to log in with your Project Online credentials. If you do have it as anonymous, you will get a message that says resource access forbidden because it hasn't, again, authenticated that you can read the data. And you can change that. I'll show you how you can go into an existing connection that you have and edit the way that you're logging in. As I mentioned, there are 41 different data tables in Project Online, but these ones here, these 6 that we'll go through, and I will jump to Power BI in just a minute, are the most common tables that you'll use for creating your reports. Projects, resources, tasks, and assignments are by far the most common tables that I see and use myself. Projects is your project level information. Anything that you can see in Project Center, project summary tasks that roll up to the project level is what you will see here. Resources is what you can see in Resource Center. It doesn't have anything to do with their tasks or their assignments, but more importantly, what role are they, standard rate, those kinds of things that you can configure that will follow that resource around through any projects that they are assigned to. And then you have tasks, because a project can have and will have many tasks. Any task level custom fields that you built, management reporting, what phase gate is this? Are there any additional notes that you want to tasks? Those will be found in your tasks table. And each task, we're going from most broad to most specific here. Each task can be assigned to multiple resources, which will generate multiple assignments. So I have a task, define requirements, and I have 3 people assigned to that task. Each person is going to be assigned a different assignment. They can have different start and finish dates. They can each be assigned a different amount of work. And each of their assignments will be a different row in the table. The 2 down below, we have an assignment time phase and timesheet lines. And I do have a star next to these because they will add a lot of data and make your refresh take longer because there's just so much data in these tables. The assignment time phase takes your assignments. Again, every task has multiple resources for assignments, and it's going to break that down by day. Any time phased report that you want to look at, you have available resource forecasting, resource availability, resource actual work, where you want to look at it per month, per day, per week. Assignment time phased is going to be the table that you want. There is a column in here, and again, I'll show you in Power BI in just a minute. For time by day, it's going to stamp exactly the day and the amount of work per person, per task, per project. So going back to our example for assignments, if you have one task with 3 people on it, and that task is scheduled to be for a week, your assignment time table is going to have a line for each day for each person. So on March 1st, Amanda's going to work 8 hours on this one task of this one project, etc. On Tuesday, same task, same assignment, a different number of hours, and it's going to break it down by day. And from here, you can roll it up to week, you can roll it up to month, you can roll it up to year, however it is that your organization is looking to roll up that information. Timesheet lines, if you are using timesheets in your configuration and you want to be able to not only look at project time, but also look at admin time, vacation time, other admin categories that are not project work, timesheet lines is the table that you'll use to get that. You can also look at timesheet manager, the status of if your timesheets have been approved or if they're still processing, but timesheet lines will give you a line for each time reporting period and the person and the project and all of that good stuff that goes into your timesheets. For every table, there is we'll say a fairly reasonable structure to the way that they're designed. The left of every table is going to be your ID columns. For project, this is the projects table, so we have our project ID, which is our unique identifier for project. You can see it's a very long GUID, or GUID, however you say that. It's very long, and it's going to uniquely identify not only this project, but in creating different table relationships, tying this project information to the tasks, to the risks, to the issues that belong to this project as well. If you have a different table, a tasks table, you'll see both project ID and task ID or risk ID or others along those lines that are going to, again, uniquely identify that object. After the IDs, you are going to see the out-of-the-box project online fields. The enterprise project types, project name, project duration, project work, all of the out-of-the-box fields. And there are a lot of them. You probably have taken a look at them and say, I don't even know what some of these mean. Some of them have optimizer in them. If you're using a workflow or not, they are still going to be there. So you have all of your default fields in alphabetical order. And then at the very end of the table are going to be any custom fields that you have put in your environment. And if you were not part of configuration in your environment, you probably are thinking there is no rhyme or reason for the custom field order, but they actually do get put at the end of the table in the order that they were created in your environment. So if you add and bring in new custom fields, it'll be at the very, very, very end of your table. Table relationships are very important in creating your structure to make sure that Power BI knows which projects do these risks belong to, which project do these tasks belong to, which task do these assignments belong to, for being able to really tell the back end how all of this is going to go together, not only for what goes together for tasks and projects, but also for being able to filter. You need to use the most granular ID field that you can, and it will depend a lot on what you're trying to tie together. In this example, we have our projects, and then we have our risks, and our line is connecting them with a one-to-many relationship. For every one project, I have many risks. For every one project, I have many tasks. And my arrow is filtering from projects to risks. So if in my report, I was going to pull a filter for, we'll say, program, which is a project level field, and I pull it from my projects table, that will filter down to the risks associated with that program. So making sure you watch the arrows for the way that those are built. Power BI, I will say, does a pretty good job of defining the relationships for you by default. It will make some guesses for you when you bring in that data for the first time. But I always come here as the first thing and make sure that it accurately is putting together the table relationships. Sometimes it does get it wrong, and you won't notice that till you pull fields into a table and it gives you that message that I'm sure we've all seen that says, sorry, you can't do this, with the big X. And that's because you're pulling it from different tables that you have not yet told Power BI how they relate to each other. You can also use your data model for additional columns and formulas. In the data model that we'll look at in just a minute, where it shows you all of the fields, it uses a DAX language. So if you're familiar with DAX for Excel, then you'll be able to build in custom columns and formulas here. You can also change date formats here, because Project Online has the full date and then a time for every date, but you can shorten it, and I'll show you where to do that as well. The most common formulas that I use myself, both either in a custom column or in a measure, which we're not going to go through too much today, is the if and the switch. If is helpful a lot of times when you have cards and you want to do counters, but you don't want it to show you those blanks. So I use if a lot to say, if there is nothing, show me a 0 instead. Don't show me a blank, show me a 0. And switch is helpful for producing any KPIs, turning a text value into a number value that you can then use for icon sets, conditional formatting, adding a flag, turning a cell red, I use the switch a lot for those. And you can see the example down here. We have our if here, and this one is a measure. It's going to calculate looking at issue ID, and then it's going to show me a 0 if it is blank, and if not, it will show me the true count. And then I have my KPI over here for project cost. We have put in our demo environment some formula fields for calculating cost that are just whenever you make a change, publish a project, it's going to recalculate, and output that for you. I have turned that into a KPI here where I'm showing, instead of the word red or the word yellow, I'm showing that indicator, the red, yellow, green indicator. This is an example of a project status report that I have. This looks very similar to one that we provide internally. And this report focuses on one project at a time. Project name is Apparel ERP Upgrade System. And I have put in a couple of features here that I'm going to make sure that I go through with everybody. And this report is 2 pages for the end user. But as me, the builder, I have 4 pages on this report, and I've hidden 2 of them. You can see it has the icon with the hiding. I'm going to click on my data over here, which is going to bring me to my data model. Let me collapse my in here a little earlier. If I click on my projects table, I can see my full list here, which does show you in alphabetical order. But in the table here, it shows it to you in that format that I mentioned, where you have your IDs at the front, all of the out-of-the-box fields for Project Online. We'll scroll through them fairly quickly. You notice any of them that are project identifiers do start with the word project as well. So project start date, project finish date, project duration. Project owner, which is your project manager. And if I keep scrolling here, workflow is my last alphabetical order. Here we go. Then it starts our custom fields. And again, it looks like it is kind of a random order, but it is in the way that they were added. So we have project status, which is a way for me to identify which projects am I planning, which projects am I actually in execution for, which ones are closed. My health, which is my indicator, I can show both in Project Center as a red, yellow, green, and I can also show it in the report. And then some other custom fields that I have my program, I have my total benefits, ROI. And if I look at a different one, I'm going to go down to my tasks table here. I now have 2 different ID columns. This one, which ties it to which project it is, which is very important for relationship building. And then I have task ID here, which is tying it specifically for this one task. Again, any task level fields that you have built are going to live here. So we have our IDs, then we have all of our out-of-the-box custom fields, and then at the very end, we don't have any task fields in the custom fields in this environment. Those would be at the end. The tasks table is great for pulling out parts of your task, parts of your project. For example, you want to show your milestones, or you want to show only summary tasks, which are your stages and phases or deliverables. There is going to be a field that supports each one. So task is milestone. If it's true, it's a milestone. So looking at reporting at a program level, I want to see all of my milestones across my program. Your task level fields here is what you can use to filter. Task is summary, task is active, task is project summary. Your line 0 tasks are all really good markers for filtering on your visuals. The assignment time phased, expand, you can see it's the assignment time phase data set. Again, had that asterisk in PowerPoint to show you that this is going to hold a lot of data. So we have our project, we have our assignment. We also, if we scroll down over here a little bit more, there is a task ID in this one as well. And then we have the time by day. Again, you want to be able to look at things by month. I want to look at for March, which we're in now, what is my resource availability? What is the capacity? And being able to look at everybody's scheduled time right now from all the projects. Time by day will show you where they're scheduled. In this example, on October 28th, this particular person on this particular task and project is scheduled to work a certain number of hours. The same resource, oh my gosh, my screen's jumping around a bit here. On the same project, the same assignment, the next day they are assigned a different amount of work. And so this is really where you're going to get that breakdown. If you have used the Microsoft Power BI content pack, the time by a day is used all over the place for your resourcing. I'm going to click on my relationships here. And here are the 5 different tables that I have in this report. I have my projects table, which again is leading to all of the other tables that I have. So for every one project, multiple risks, one project, multiple tasks, etc., as well as following that arrow. I can highlight to see exactly how those are tied together. These tables used to have all your IDs at the top like they did in the tables, but they changed that for some reason. So now I have to scroll down, but if I highlight over the relationship, I can see exactly what field it is. That's linking those together. And always going down to that most granular level will give you more accurate results. In this case, I can tie my projects table directly to that assignment time base if I wanted, and it looks like that's how Power BI defaulted it to. Or I can tie it to task ID, which is down one more level. It's not project ID. I can tie them down to the task, which is going to give me more accurate information. So in this case, that's actually what I would want to do. So I can double click on my dependency, and I can just go ahead and make that relationship inactive. It's my way of telling Power BI that they did it wrong. Then I can double click on that inactive one and I can edit. You can see I'm editing the relationship here between one of the tables to the other, and I want to make this relationship active. Your many to one, one to many relationship here is what's important. Again, it's what drives this line here for telling the tables how to relate together. And I want to relate it by task ID, many assignments to one project, and I want to activate that relationship. So now if I was to pull in information from projects, again, looking at program, it'll filter down to task, then filter down to my assignment time based. Come back into my table over here for a minute and look at some additional columns and formulas that I have built that only live in this report. They don't live in Project Online, but if I was to come to the report, there are additional things you can do here. One of the first conversations that I have with clients who are deploying Project Online is I talk to them about what kind of reports that they would like. But not only that, what makes the most sense to live in your configuration that you can see in Project Center, and what makes sense to do in your reporting. If your reporting is what most of your executives are going to see, then that might be where you want to do a lot of your formulas and manipulation of your data versus putting it in Project Center and project fields, because that's just more upkeep for your project managers to do. So what's the right balance for you? Do you want to see it in Project Online, Project Center, or is a report sufficient for the audience? I'm going to search here for count. I like to start my measures with an M. That way when I look for them, I know it is a measure and not a custom column. Just how I like to identify mine. That way, if I pass off this report to somebody, they can see how I built it on the back end. I'm going to click on let's click on our milestones one. This measure lives in my tasks table, and I have put in my measure up here. This is telling me that if, and this is using a 0 instead of a blank, if I'm looking for milestones and there are none, I want it to show me 0 instead of showing blank. So I have put in my if statement here. That's going to show me that. And I can pull that measure into my report just like I would a custom field, and it'll change based on the filters, the metrics that I have put on that page. It's very dynamic. My indicator here shows me that these are custom columns just in this report. And if I click, you can see I have built a couple of different ones for the different KPIs that I have. I have done a switch statement that tells me the first true one is what we're going to go with here for my project cost. So I can see if it's green, I'm turning it into a number, because conditional formatting for your cells does require a number or a percent value. It won't take a text value. So first I have to convert them to a number, and then I can apply that conditional formatting to a field. You can toggle that field to either show you the true value, like red, yellow, green, or only your icon set. That is up to you. So in this, I have used my switch to turn them into numbers and then pull that into my report and applied some conditional formatting. This table here also, come on, you, will also show me, or can also be where I change my date formats. In the ribbon up here at the top, under your column tools, if you select any of the columns here, you can see that there is the name, the data type, the format. And if you do choose, let's look at our finish date. Look at our actual finish date. Look at our actual start date here. That it comes in with a full date and a full time. All I need to do to change that is choose my drop down here, and there are a lot of formats. I usually go with this one right here, and it'll change it both in this table here and in any visuals in your report that you choose. So anyone to do, I pull it in and it'll show it to you in this format. If I come back here, you can say I did that for some of my dates for my status date that you set in Project Professional, for my last published date, which you publish, and it'll populate for you. I have made that my standard date format. Power Query Editor is a more advanced way to manipulate the data. But if you are going to become a power user for Power BI, I would definitely recommend you open it, you look at it, and you see if you're comfortable with it, because it really will help you streamline what data is going to come into your report at all. It helps with your refresh time because you can filter out fields entirely. If you're not using workflows, you don't need workflow fields. Those optimizer columns, some of the other project things on the back end, if enterprise project types doesn't matter to you to report on, you can choose in Power Query Editor to not bring those in. So when your report refreshes, it's only going to bring in the fields that you have said you need. If for projects you only need project name, program, project start, project finish, and project owner, then it's only going to refresh those 5 fields for every project. It's not going to take the time to go through everything. You can also do some more advanced steps here, like replacing null values with NA or whatever you would like to show, or any time-phased data you can filter out in the past. Some of our clients have been in Project Online for many years, and a time-phased data over hundreds of projects really is going to add to your refresh time. So you can filter out dates. I can say I'm no longer interested in anything that happened before June 30th of 2020. And you can filter out everything before then to, again, help refresh your report easier, quicker. The formulas can also be built in here, which is a little bit more efficient. And instead of using DAX, it uses M, which is similar. Some of the operators are different, but it does take a little practice to get familiar with the M. But you can build out custom columns in here as well as create, as well as merge your queries together, append queries, really flatten out your data. You can do a lot more manipulation of the data in Power Query Editor. So back to our report here, we're going to take just a quick look at Power Query Editor. I'm going to click on my data grid here. And in any of, we have it filtered here, it doesn't really matter, but in any of the tables, I can right click on any of them. I can create my new measure, my new column, or I can edit the query. And if I click Edit Query, it's going to bring up Power Query Editor in a brand new window. Power Query Editor will show you your queries panel over here. It's usually collapsed by default, but you can toggle, make sure you're working in the correct query. It shows you your data the same way that you see it here, that you'll see it in the data model. And then you have your query settings over here with your list of applied steps. As you make changes to it, you filter things out, you replace values, you merge. It's going to show you those steps here as you go through. I don't think we've done any manipulation in here in this report. So I'm going to click on my projects table. Up here in the choose column is where you can filter out what comes into your report. You can choose columns, choose columns again, and it's going to show me a list of all of the fields in this table. You can just deselect the ones that you don't want. Let's remove our optimizers here, for example, and click OK. And you can see it will remove those. It lets you know that it removed the columns. And if I was to come over here and look for it, it's not going to be here. And when I apply this to my data model, it's not going to be in there either. I can come back at any point by clicking on my gear and bring them back in. Or if you add in brand new columns, then you can come in here and add those in as well. You can also do some replace of values. For every time there's null, I want to replace it with something else. You can do that in Power Query Editor. And you can also, let's go to a particular column. Let's go to my finish date. Didn't go finish date. If I want to filter out any projects that finished, for example, before 2020, then I can choose the drop down here and filter that out. I want to filter out, I want to keep any projects that happen after a certain date. So Power Query Editor, I again just quickly wanted to show it to you, but I like Power Query Editor, and I think it's very handy for large reports. You can also merge and append your queries, which we're not going to go through today, but you can then combine them where they're in one flat table. Go ahead and close that, not save any changes to my report right now. In your reports, I always try to make the most of my real estate. And that's done in a couple of different ways in the way that I create reports. And I'll show you some of the examples that I have used. But the first thing I do before I ever come to Power BI is know what my report purpose is going to be. Am I looking for a portfolio report that shows everybody high-level costs, high-level information about projects at the program level or business unit or however you want to slice it, which can be more than one way? Am I looking at resource? Do I want to look at their availability and capacity for the next rolling year, for example? Do I want to have a team member report where they can come in and look at their tasks? When are their assignment start and finish dates? What total number of hours are being expected of them? Really understanding what is the purpose will help save time as you go through. There are times where I don't exactly know how I'm going to build it, but I know I'm going to need project owner name. I know I'm going to need certain fields. So I just start pulling those in and then kind of just work from there. But using visuals for multiple purposes is a great first way to be able to do that. I can have one visual that, based on the filter selections and the criteria, is going to show me different data. A lot of times for cost, this can be used. It can show you actual. It can show you remaining. If you have a custom fields for approved budget, all of that can be pulled into one visual. And then based on your program, your project manager, I can see only certain pieces of that. The resources working on it. I can use that one visual for multiple reasons. There are a lot of visuals that are out of the box, but there are also a lot from the marketplace. So I always recommend at least looking at the marketplace to see if there are any custom visuals that might better suit what you're looking for. Particularly if you are looking for showing something in a timeline format, a Gantt format, the marketplace is definitely the way to go for those kinds of visuals. And I actually have one in the demo report that I was showing. If you are, but one caveat to that, or two caveats actually, some of them do cost money, or they are free to download, and then there may be additional charges. I have not run into that, but it does always like to prompt you. that happens. I just don't choose those. And also, if you are going to export your report, let's say it's a project status and you deliver that to your client on a monthly basis, some visuals do not support exporting. You can do it from the desktop client if you want to, but if you have your report in a workspace, some will give you a big X when you try and export it and say this visual does not support exporting. So when you finish building your report, if you're going to publish it to a Power BI workspace, always try that export first to make sure that that visual will export. With those timelines in mind, I have found a few of them will and a few of them won't. It is about 50%. So always making sure you try that. Since IDs are used to uniquely identify objects, using those for any and every count that you put into a report is key. If you have a card visual that's counting the number of milestones that you have, use task ID and then qualify it with filters. Task is milestone, task is active, but using task ID to be unique, especially if you use scheduled templates that are repeatable. If you use project name, you may have a milestone called scope complete across 10 different projects because that's the way that your template was built. If you use task name and you look for unique ones, that's only one. It's not going to show you for 10 projects. It's only going to show you one. So using ID. Also for any stacked bar graphs that you need that need to use that, use ID for those unique ones as well. I like to use bookmarks in my reports to expand and collapse certain pieces of information, again, to save my report real estate. I don't need to have a bunch of visual filters at the top or slicers at the top or use the filters panel. I have a bookmark, and I'll show that to you, where I can expand it and see different selections, different options, and then I can collapse it to view then the actual data of the report that I'm looking for. So using it for that filters panel, and then also using it for data tips. A lot of the deployments we do have project managers who are going to be supplying the information that's output in their reports, and they want to know where is it all coming from, because some is coming from your detail pages, some is coming from your project schedule, some is coming from a different detail page, some is coming from project sites. So really having a good understanding for those PMs of like, look at this visual, where does my data come from on my day-to-day project management? Is it coming from my project schedule, or where is it coming from? When I create the reports, I always create a guide, like a table of contents, where I'm like, number one comes from here, but you can also put that into your report. And that is actually something that I have put in. Discard those changes in here. I have a couple of different buttons here that expand. I have one down here that is going to be my info button. If I control click on that, it's going to bring up tooltips on my report that let the PM, if they were to come here, know where all of this information comes from. This is going to be your filters panel, which I'll show you in just a second. This comes from your details page. These are your summary tasks, active issues and risks. It's a way to really help qualify for whoever's supplying the information, how to get it out. And then I have my filters panel here. So I can click here and I bring up my filters panel. Since this is just a one project at a time report, that is the only filter I have here. But on portfolio dashboards, you can have all of your filter criteria here. Project department, project name, business unit. You can stack all of those different visuals here that you can then slice across the board for your report. So if I need to change my project name, I'll just choose my project, and you can see that behind it, everything is updating dynamically. And then I can collapse it with that button there. And now I have the new status report that I can use to export, send off to my client, send off internally, whoever needs to be aware. This visual right here, I'm going to expand my visualizations panel. All of these above this, you probably can't see it, this dotted line here, are out of the box. And I like a lot of these. I like the card, I use the donut, I use the stacked bar with the line one a lot. And any of them that start here are custom that I have gone to the marketplace to find. I typed in timeline, typed in Gantt chart, and it'll bring you up different options that you can then look at, review, to look at the reviews, and decide which one is the best fit. So this one here is actually a custom visual. And as you notice down here, each one has its own criteria to make it work. You have to supply certain pieces of information. I click on this visual, it's an out-of-the-box visual, and it needs certain things to go onto the axis and then certain things to go onto your value. So here's your fields panel one. Let's look at this one, okay. We have our fields here, and then I've applied conditional formatting here. But this first box here is what fields from your fields panel are being used. If I open that, I can see that all of the fields here are coming from my projects table. If I click on this one here, all of these are coming from my tasks table. So it helps to be able to see this one's coming from projects, this one's coming from projects as well. Where is the data coming from for its source as well? If I click on my paint roller, each visual has its own set of things that you can modify to. This is a table visual. It's just bringing in one value for each because it's just one project. And I have some options here under column headers. How do I want these headers to behave? Do I want there to be a background, which in a very white report I usually do? How big do I want those to be? But particularly for this visual here, I have applied conditional formatting. I showed that cost KPI formula that uses switch. So if I go down to my cost field, I can do my either background, font, or icons, and I have an icon set being applied to it right now. Click on Advanced Controls, and it'll bring me up my KPI here. I am formatting it based on rules, where I am using my cost KPI calculated fields to turn each number into a KPI. So if it's a 1, show me green, 2, show me yellow, etc. Icon layout here is where you can choose to say, I want the icon to appear to the left or right of the data, or I only want to see the icon. Don't really care about what the value is. And if I hover, you can see if you do have the values there, a lot of the formulas we build in are compared to baseline. So it's 15% over baseline. If you do have that, it'll show you that value here like it will. So you hover and you can still get the true value if you wanted to see it. I also have a second page here for issues, risks, and milestones. And I am using this to use some of those measures that I calculated before as well. I have my milestone section over here. If I click onto my milestones, each one of these I am using to calculate using that measure that says if there are no late milestones, for example, don't show me the word blank, show me a 0. I have also used some formatting to make this always be red so that if they are late, everyone's going to know about it. Change my project actually over here. So on this project, I have 5 late milestones. I also have conditional formatting applying here to let me know that if they are late, turn them red, because if they are late, everybody's going to know. I have a grouping of all of my milestones here, but I have put conditional formatting on here and used those custom columns. I have my issues and risks here that are from the project site. So if they are active, then it'll show it to me. If they're closed, they'll show it to me. And then I have filtered out my information from my tables here. And then I have 2 different hidden tips that I'll look at in just a minute, but they are hidden to the front user. Touched on just a little bit that each visual does have its own criteria to make it work. And using those IDs is going to be super important, making sure that everything is uniquely counted. And with not only the ID, but also with the distinct count. And I'll show you that in just a second. So I have my milestones over here. My visual over here. I'm using a stacked bar. It's showing me summary tasks. I'm filtering it to show me only tasks that are summaries. And then it has my fields that I'm using to actually qualify the data. Same for my milestones. I'm using my filters over here. And you can hide those from your end users. You can let those filters be visible to them so that they don't want to only see, milestones here, for example. They want to see all their tasks. They can change it. Or you can lock it down so that whoever is digesting the information, I need a new word for that. Whoever is viewing the information can choose whether or not they want to see it, or you can hide it and say, I want you to always and only look at, for example, active issues. I don't want you to look at any of the closed ones, doesn't matter. So you can lock that down per visual. And then using tooltips to help provide additional information. On this report, I have a count of open issues and open risks. And if I hover over each of them, it's going to give me a pop-up of more information. I can go to the next tab and I can look at it. But if I just hover over that card, it's going to give me a pop-up with the issue title, the due date, and then again, I've applied a conditional formatting. If the due date is past today, give me a red icon. So in this example, February 26th has passed, so it's giving me red, but March 4th hasn't happened yet, so it's not showing that it's a problem. Look here. So I have my milestones. I have conditional formatting applied here. I have these. If you hover over your values here, you'll be able to see what the backend field is. I have renamed it in this report to say key milestone name. But if I hover, the single quotes tells me what table it's from, and the brackets tells me its backend field name. So if I ever need to come here and make a change, I know exactly where that field the information came from. Same with the rest of these in here. I use measures for those, so we won't be able to see them. So if I do, let's click down here for a minute. If I hover over my open issues and open risks, come on. I have built a tooltip for each one to show it to me. So here's my open risks. I hover. I wasn't being patient enough. It'll give me a list, again, for only this project, because your tooltips will be dynamic based on the filters for the page. For my apparel ERP project, there are 4 open risks. 3 of them are past due, and I can see that just by having this tooltip, that gives me more information on this front page. I have created an issues and risks tooltip down here where I have changed the size of this page. And I have made it a tooltip and just applied it to that main dashboard. One of the keys in creating tooltips is for the entire page, changing your size. Shortening it down, making it small to fit whatever information you're going to put. So that way when you do hover from your main page, it doesn't take up the entire screen, or it isn't super teeny tiny and you have to scroll in the tooltip. So really playing with your page size for what makes the most sense. And then you can apply your visuals to this page just like you would any other page for Power BI. Put your table, rename your visuals, click it here. You have your values. I have some conditional formatting, all of the same kind of things. Click back on my page. Page information. Making this a tooltip. Flipping this on. And I always like to name it where it says tip at the end. And then making sure that that tooltip is turned on here. And then once you've created them, I always hide them because you don't need to see them otherwise. I'll come back to my main page here. Click on my visual, the one I want to apply it to. Go to my format and scroll down to tooltip. There is an out-of-the-box tooltip. If you hover over any of them, it looks like this. It just shows you the information only in that visual. You don't really have, you can add additional fields here, but to make it look pretty, make it look a little fancier, a tooltip is definitely what I'd recommend. So selecting tooltip, turning it on, and then choosing it's going to be a page in this report, and then choosing what page that it's going to be. And then once you have that, you can, again, do the hover, then see more information about whatever it is that you want to do. Issues and risks is a great one to do it for. Also resourcing, looking at capacity and availability. For example, you have a bar that shows you by role, by analyst, developer, etc., what is their overall availability for the next 12 months. That's what my visual shows me. I can add a tooltip to that to say, if I hover over the exact month, I can not only see the total, but I can see per person, per project, per task, whatever amount of detail you want, what is making up that total. So you have 60 hours of availability left for March. I can hover and I can see who in that group has it. So tooltips is, saving you real estate and helping you provide more information, making your report, which Power BI is intended to be, very interactive. Our last little section over here is about Power BI Workspace. We're not going to go into this too much, but I wanted to show it to you at least a little bit. So a Power BI Workspace, everybody who has a Power BI license is going to have a My Workspace. So if you create reports, you can publish them there, and you are the only person who can see that. If you want to create reports that are shared by everybody, you and everybody who's viewing your information needs to have a Power BI Pro license or E5 license that comes with Power BI Pro. You need to have that, and they also need to have been granted permissions to the workspace. Some organizations lock that down so that only certain people can create and add to the workspace. But once you do have to have access to it to then absorb the information there or view it. The Power BI reports are published in a certain way with default filters, default criteria, and that's the way that the report's published. You can interact with it, make your changes to your filters, to your selections, but there is a reset to default button, and I'll show you where that is. You can also make light edits there, but I'll happily point out to you what I don't particularly like about editing reports there. And then in the Power BI Workspace, you can export it to PDF or to PowerPoint. Again, watch out for those custom visuals from the marketplace if you do have those. I am now in my Power BI Workspace. Over here, I can see all of my options for just Power BI Workspace. I click here. These are all of the workspaces that I am a part of. So if I want to look at the reports for each one, I can do that because, again, not just project online data. You can use it for your ERP system. You can use it for if you use another timesheet system like Deltek or Replicon, anything else. You can have those. And I am in this particular one here. And if I click up here, it'll take me to the workspace where I can see all of my reports. I can interact here. You can see I can't see those ones that I've hidden because those aren't the published version. So users will not be able to see those also. I can still interact with my report. I can choose my filters. I can change it. And now up at the top, I get this reset icon turns to yellow because I have changed it from the way that this report was originally published. So I can still manipulate the data as much as I want, slice, cross-slice, whatever I need to do. And then if I do want to reset it back to how the report was published originally, I can just click that reset button and then reset again. You can see my filters panel over here. Let's click here. I do have some of mine that you can use. I have chosen to let these be visible to everybody, but flipping back to my report here if I do not want that to happen. Let's click on this one again. Come on. I can hide it and I can lock it. Hiding it means it will not be visible. Locking it means that it cannot be changed. my export up here, I can choose PowerPoint or PDF or Analyze. And once you do select that, I can either choose to do it with the current values. So if you're doing a project status report, that is what you will want to do. Not show me hidden tabs, and I can export. And that will now show it to you in your downloads bar down at the bottom. Phew, we had a lot of information today. So we have finished the main content for our webinar for today. We do have 2 additional upcoming webinars. We have our tips and tricks for project managers in Project Online next week. And then in 3 weeks, we have the how to configure security. So how to determine what project managers can do versus team members versus portfolio viewers in Project Online. And we are finalizing our spring webinar schedule right now. So if you have any suggestions, we have a poll on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to us directly and give us your recommendations. And I appreciate you joining today. If you have any questions, any follow-ups, I'm trying to do this in Power BI and I can't figure out what's going on, feel free to send me a note. Here is my direct email, or you can contact our main info email address. Both of those contact information is there. And I appreciate everybody's time today, and have a good rest of your day.